NBA draft that I don't know if even people in the NBA realize it's happening tomorrow night, but it is happening.
It's
Um,
actually a 2-day event because they're doing it tomorrow night and then Wednesday afternoon.
no, it's
Or
Thursday afternoon.
that's what I meant. Thursday afternoon. My
So
bad.
first time ever the NBA draft is 2 nights. Maybe the biggest storyline, as I alluded to earlier in the show, is the fact that Bronny James, LeBron James' son, is going to be drafted. We assume by the Lakers. The question is, will he be drafted by the Lakers, and where? And will a team, in the first round, go out and draft the kid? The other thing here is we got two guys from France, and we got a Zach Edey from Purdue. It'll be very interesting to see where he goes. Um, but nobody, I can't find one person in the world who is excited for this NBA draft. And after about 10 picks, I don't even know if it's going to be worth watching.
Honestly, I don't know if I'm even gonna watch a single pick of the first round
I was about to say that. I don't know either.
because AEW Dynamite is on tomorrow night. And it's the go home show before Forbidden Door. So I'm like, that sounds more interesting to me than the NBA draft because there's not like a Paolo Banchero in this draft or a Victor Wembanyama. There's not that like, oh, we got to talk about this guy for a whole week because that's what it was last year. Like, hell, even ESPN sent Brian Windhorst to France to be with Victor Wembanyama. Um,
It was Wemby, Brandon Miller, and Scoot Henderson.
yes. Um, and I think it was like a couple years before that where we weren't sure who the number one pick was going to be, whether it was Paolo Banchero. I think that was the year with Chet Holmgren, right?
Pablo Chet and Jabari Smith.
Yes. So you had that intrigue around the draft, and obviously last year you had the intrigue with Victor Wembanyama. Um, I got nothing for this draft. I'm like, where's the intrigue? Where's the oh, it's gonna be this guy that's number one pick? I haven't heard anything. Have
Well,
you?
it's going to be Azar, the kid from France. He's assuming going to go to Atlanta. But I think it's very noteworthy to our faithful viewers at home that Josh Unger, who we have all known over these past 10 months of championship rings, and he even admits to this, is a very unique style. It can pretty much create a storyline out of anything, has nothing for this NBA draft.
Yeah. I mean, the best I can come up with is where are the two Kentucky guys gonna go? Reed Shepard and Rob Dillingham. Though that's about the only intriguing thing I can come up with.
I will say this, and I told you this. I think it was last week in the show we discussed this. At some point in this run, whether it's a lottery pick, a second round pick in a commercial, like the way Nikola Jokic was drafted in Denver, I do feel we're gonna get a superstar out of this draft. I don't know where it's gonna be. I don't know who's gonna draft them. I don't know where it's gonna come from. But out of a whole draft, you're going to tell me that 60 players are going to be drafted and not one of them isn't going to be a significantly very good player? I do find that hard to believe.
Yeah, like we didn't know Giannis was gonna turn into what he became.
How about Kawhi Leonard?
Yeah. You could make the
Even
same
a guy
argument.
like Donovan Mitchell, who may be on the lower tier star slash superstar list, he was a lottery pick.
Yeah. Um, you could argue. You could argue Nikola Jokic, like he was a
Well, I
second.
just said that. He was a second round pick who was drafted during a freaking, I think it was a spray commercial or something.
So, like, and what about Michael Porter Jr.? Like he's
Yeah.
become a, I wouldn't say a superstar, but you could argue an all-star
Well,
caliber.
Porter's a different story, I think, because he was supposed to be a top five, top 10 pick, and then his back got hurt in college.
Yeah. So, and I remember when Jalen Brown got drafted by the Celtics, like there was a lot of conversation about whether the Celtics were going to keep that pick or were they going to trade it for someone.
Speaking of draft day trades, how about the trade Atlanta and Dallas made Trey Young for Luca?
Yeah,
Who
I would.
won that end of the deal? I mean,
Gosh, I don't know. Maybe I would say the Hawks won that trade.
so regardless, I mean, here's the thing: there's not a lot of excitement around the NBA draft. Some people are going to watch it. Basketball junkies are going to watch it. People that watch college basketball, know these guys more than me and you do. You watch more college basketball than I have. But I think it's a prime example, this NBA draft is, of where the NBA is heading and where college basketball is heading, which is all the good players are overseas, most of them in France, some of them are somewhere else, and the best players in college basketball may be barely a lottery pick.
Yeah, and yet for some reason, besides like Wembenyama and Giannis and Nikola Jokic, we don't really hear about these overseas guys. Like the NBA doesn't really do a great job promoting the international players.
Well, that's because it's supposed, even though the NBA is more global than the NFL and basketball is obviously more accessible and easier to play than football, the NBA still is really an American game. And I think there is some, the NBA fan base, even more than the NFL sometimes, even though the NBA does feel at times very progressive, at times there is a portion of the fan base that's not progressive at all, that is very American, that believes in the 80s and 90s way of basketball, that does not like the new age of the NBA at all, which is, I think, in part why the NBA doesn't promote international as much as they should until you get to the Olympic level.
Yeah. Um, and that's why I've heard discussion or arguments about when the NBA like champion is crowned and they say world champions and you have people saying world champions. What the heck are you talking about? Like I've heard that at like press conferences like world you're not the world champions.
Well, I mean, they are the champions of the biggest professional brand of basketball or football or whatever in the world. Technically, they are, because the NBA is still, even though overseas is big, it's not the biggest brand in the world.
Right. Um but I'm just saying I've heard arguments like about that. I'm not saying they're right or wrong.